In addition to the weekly discussion groups and the weekly quizzes that you take, there are two other assignments for this course, and I want to talk about them briefly just to give you an idea about what I'm looking for with each of those assignments. One of them is actually due, I believe it's about the last week of the semester, and it is assesses attitudes that you have toward the use of digital technology. And what I'm using here is a framework that's been developed in part by a colleague of mine, Marky Blummer, which assesses what she calls the 7 A's of internet use. Things like anonymity and accessibility and affordability and accommodation. And if those terms don't mean much to you, don't worry about it, because what I'd like for you to do in this assignment is, first of all, to read an article that Marky has recommended that kind of explains all of these pieces of the 7 A's, as we're calling it. And then there's a brief explanation of each one and a question for each one. And I'd like you to give a response to the question that you'll find on this assignment. And by the way, you can find this assignment under the Content button of the D2L page under Course Materials. So it should be called the 7 A's assignment. And for each one of these 7 A's, accommodation, affordability, accessibility, etc., I'd like for you to give a response of about 250 words to each of the questions that were asked. So what I'm looking for is a response that has some depth, but it's not looking for you to spend, lots and lots of time sweating over what your response is going to be. Really, I'm just looking for your reaction. And while you can do it at any time during the semester, my recommendation would be that you do it toward the end. I know you have other assignments to balance, and that's fine, but doing it toward the end, by that time you will have had exposure to all 7 of the elements that we're looking for. So that's one assignment. Another assignment, and this is probably the bigger assignment, is what I'm just simply calling the course project, and there is a description of that in the syllabus as well. But I think one of the things that's important about a course like this is that it's not only about looking at what the literature has to say about digital technology and its impact on families, but it's also about how do you apply this to your own life. And of course we'll be doing that a lot during the discussion groups that take place every week. But I'd like for you to do this in a more intentional way with one project. And this project will involve your collecting some data and then interpreting what that data means and writing it up in an 8 to 10 page paper. Now, I know that may sound kind of daunting to you, maybe especially if you haven't had a research methods class, but let me suggest that I think it's something that you may really enjoy and something that may be easier to do than might sound like at first glance. So let me give you a couple of examples here about the kinds of projects that people have done, just so you'll have an idea. You can make up your own project. What I'd like for you to do is to find something that fits you, but here are a couple of examples. Some students have tracked their cell phone use over the course of a week, and they find who they send messages to, and particularly to family members, when they call them, how often do they call, how long do they call when they talk, are there some family members that they call, other family members that really don't show up on the radar. And that would be the data gathering part of this project, and then the interpretation part would be saying, okay, well, what sort of conclusions do I draw now that I have all this data? Or another kind of variation on this is you could see how you communicate using various electronic avenues, how you communicate with family members. So do you communicate primarily by text? Do you call people in the family? Do you do Instagram? Do you do Snapchat? Twitter? How do you communicate with family members? Facebook? Whatever it happens to be. And And maybe that you communicate in one way with some family members and another way with other family members. What I'd like for you to do then is to track those interactions that you have over a course of time, let's say like a week, and then see what conclusions that you draw from it. Or another possibility, and a number of people have done this, is to take several members of their family and interview them about what they think about the way in which your family uses technology. And oftentimes this is sort of a generational approach. Somebody may interview a grandparent, and then a parent, and then a sibling, and and have several people that you interview, and you kind of get a different perspective about how each of them views the use of technology in your family communication. Or I've had some students who have chosen to really kind of take an approach where they said, you know what, I really use my cell phone a lot, and I want to see what it's like to not use my cell phone. And so they set their cell phone on the shelf for a week or so, and then they see, what do they do with their time when they don't have a cell phone available to them, and then they draw some conclusions about that. The point is that there's a lot of different directions you can go with this, and I want to encourage you to be creative, and especially to do something that you would find to be useful. If you have questions about this, please let me know. Send me an email, and we can talk about it. If you have a question about whether or not a topic is appropriate or not, let me know your basic idea, and I'm happy to give you some feedback on this. But I really hope you'll take this project and say, okay, I really want to learn something about my own life and how I use digital technology, and here's an opportunity for me to do that in this project.